not just you. Let's. I'm gonna say this, and I know that Spaz has this as well, and I'm sure Lee has this as well with our followers. We have a large portion of female followers who are late diagnosis ADHD.
Upwards of 72 or 73% for me.
Same with me, and most of those are late diagnosis.
Yeah.
So, fun fact, the fastest growing demographic to be diagnosed with ADHD is actually women between their 20s and in their 30s. It is the fastest growing demographic of individuals being diagnosed with ADHD, and part of that has to do with the science progressing to the point that we now have a better understanding of what ADHD is.
I'd like to send a shout out to all my followers.
And mine too, but
Fuck mine. No, I'm kidding. You guys are great. I love you. So, historically, science has thought that ADHD was, or in the beginning, they thought that ADHD was only something that affected boys, and that's because of presentation for males tends to be more outward hyperactivity. This is the bouncing off the walls, the jiggling of the legs, the inability to stay in your seat, the running around like a feral fucking
gorilla
child thing.
Like,
I'm sorry, was I calling you out there, Patrick?
No, actually, to tell you the truth, I actually presented as a child. I actually presented inattentive, which is probably why I slipped through the cracks.
Probably. So that's relatively easy to say, hey, look at the thing that Jim Bob's doing. That's not right. And then getting a diagnosis. However,
why you throw on the table again?
However, females have a tendency to present with more inattentive type ADHD. Now, this is your daydreamers. These are your people who might have racing thoughts. The hyperactivity is still present, and this is why ADD does not exist anymore, because hyperactivity has always been present, but it's an inward presentation of the hyperactivity. So people with inattention may also suffer more guilt tripping themselves, and they may suffer more acutely with things like RSD, because they are overthinking things all the time. That is where their energy goes.
I'm gonna need you to slow your roll a little bit here.
I'm sorry, am I calling you out now?
Just a fucking lot.
I think we're all calling you. I think she's calling all of us out. All three of us, at least, and most of our
No,
followers.
I'm calling you two out because I'm fucking perfect, bitches. But the presentation between males and females is a big part of the reason why females have gone underdiagnosed for so long. But I believe Patrick has another statistic which is not about gender, but about racial disparities when it comes to ADHD.
Not just racial disparities as well, but runs mostly along racial lines, but it's also socioeconomic line. So people of color and women are underdiagnosed dramatically. Part of this has to do with the conditions that they live in, and part of this has to do with the privilege that we have. We've all talked about privilege before, of having healthcare and being able to get a diagnosis and things like that. And people of color do not have that privilege like we do. Additionally,
not all people of color.
Not all people of color. Yes, there are. It is getting better. It is starting to increase. But another problematic situation is all these studies are overrepresenting men in it, and white men
mostly.
Cis white men,
right? Cis white men. And so all these studies are being done in cis white men, and it's not paying attention to people of the alphabet mafia, or people of color, or people who do not have the privilege to actually be diagnosed. And it's a very problematic situation, which is starting to slowly rectify, but it's still being incredibly slow, and it's incredibly lagging. And there's one other factor that factors into this, and I'm going to tap Mr. Shapeshifter in this, George, as well. Cultural problems are a big thing as well, because like George is a Latino, and there is a strong stigma against mental health in the Latino community still. He is working on educating through that community as well, but he's running into some brick walls of people. Like, we run into ableists a lot, but it seems to be he's running into a lot more than we are.
Oh yeah, when he was describing like the kind of comments that he has to deal with from fellow Latinos, it's like it doesn't exist, and if it does, you don't talk about it.
And I've had people from Argentina and South America reach out to me and say their parents don't believe in it, and there's nothing there to teach or learn because they don't have any resources in their country. So it's a real struggle that we have to continue to address and educate and help lift up these people like George who are educating in those communities as well.
Absolutely. And
Jinx.
Yeah, if I was to sit and do a poll in my Discord, the amount of people from Latin America, South America, whatnot, Mexico, etc., that their family falls into the same thing. They don't believe in it. The supports aren't there. It is so much harder a struggle than it needs to be, than it should be, for people to, get a diagnosis, to even see a doctor sometimes, to get medication to help them. It's ridiculous.
It's not just Latin America. I have a follower who used to live in South Africa.
No, we have a couple on the Discord from South Africa.
She said that it's problematic there as well because
Big time.
People don't believe in it and there's no resources, and it's just a problem.
It's the exact same with certain Asian cultures. Not all of them, but there are Asian cultures where modern medicine is frowned upon.
This is where we struggle, and this is what we have to do as, look at me. I'm a white, privileged man who has the ability to go get a diagnosis, and I have healthcare, and I live in the United States, where it may be a struggle sometimes, but it's not nearly the struggle that other people do. So part of my job as a mental health advocate is to help shine the light on these and help these people to get resources and education that they need.
Exactly, and I'm on the exact same page as you, right?
Yeah, what he said, except I'm female, not male.
There you go.
Which means you just have a harder struggle than we do.
Yeah. But your voice is great.
Shut the fuck up. Swear to God.
I'm not wrong.
Okay, I think we have proven
ADHD only affects boys.
Busted.
All right. The next one I pulled says that children will outgrow the ADHD thing by adulthood.
This is partially true. Partially
true and completely false.
Yes, because while you don't outgrow ADHD, if you actually have it, right? We'll say that. If you actually have it, you never outgrow ADHD. But when you become an adult, there are points where you create enough coping mechanisms as an adult where your ADHD is not considered a disabling factor anymore.
I have 2 points on that.
Okay.
One, with the you can outgrow it, I'm going to go with a no. And the reason is because it is on a spectrum and because your traits can shift and change over the course of your life. So in the case of yours truly, I presented a lot more hyperactive when I was younger, into my 20s. And by the time I got into my 30s, I was less hyperactive and still strong in the inattentive. So gonna go with no on that one. With the coping mechanisms one, I mentioned many times when I get somebody will ask me, I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. Should I get a diagnosis? Should I get on medication? And what I'll usually tell them is, do you feel like it's going to help you? Because by that point, I wish I had fucking bookmarked the source, but it was sometime by around your 30s, your early 30s, when a lot of your coping mechanisms and your strategies are kind of in place and set for the rest of your life. But if you've already got ones that are set up for you so that you can succeed, then I say no. It's a personal choice in that regard. I kind of veered a little bit off topic, but so we're coming back around.
I'm gonna use my reference that I've used in this before, which is Chad.org. Specifically says, others may have a misdiagnosis of ADHD or underlying conditions is either resolved or properly identified and treated in adulthood. These thoughts may account for why it appears that about 20% of children have outgrown ADHD.
Appears.
So let's drop some statistics, shall we?
Do it.
Mm-hmm.
I love statistics.
Mm-hmm.
I love me some good statistics. So, it has been shown that 70% of teens that were diagnosed as ADHD as children will continue to suffer with their symptoms during their teenage years. That becomes 50% of children that are diagnosed with ADHD will continue to suffer with their symptoms into adulthood. It is estimated that 6% of all adults have ADHD, but only 1 in 4 adults seek treatment for the disorder. And adults that don't have help with their symptoms are at a higher risk for mood disorders, anxiety, substance abuse, career problems, legal problems, financial problems, relationship problems, and problems.
Mm-hmm. How many broken relationships do you have? How many problematic situations do you have? How many financial problems do you have that you can attribute to your ADHD?
I didn't come here for this.
No, only I get to storm off like that, damn it. That's a Lee move. Because you didn't do it right, because you didn't throw your headset.
These things? No.
No, those are saviors from the puppies.
Fuck yeah.
So, Jamie, children with ADHD will outgrow the disorder in adulthood is
That one's busted.
busted. And we are at the bottom of the hat. There's only one
goodness.
left. There's only one left.
We're clipping along this
Mhm.
week.
Yeah. People with ADHD are stupid or lazy, and they will never amount to anything.
I'm sorry, that one's true. I gotta leave. Fuck off,
Bye,
you guys.
Spaz. Nice knowing you. So, like I said, I put together notes, and in this, I would like to read off just a few names of people who either are diagnosed with ADHD or historical figures who more than likely had ADHD. Mozart, Benjamin Franklin, Abraham Lincoln, George Bernard Shaw, Salvador Dali, Richard Branson, Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, Justin Timberlake, Howie Mandel, Glenn Beck, Terry Bradshaw, Adam Levine, will.i.am, Emma Watson, Lisa Ling, David Grohl, Aaron Brockovich Ellis, Channing Tatum, Ryan Gosling, Agatha Christie, Muhammad Ali, John Lennon, and Jim Carrey. And that's just a few. I could pull a shit ton more out for you if you need it.
Yep, there was one guy that I got tagged in a video for. He had cited off of, I think it was just a Wikipedia one. It was suspected that Albert Einstein had it.
Yes, that was one I came across as well.
There's another one that I read a book about that recently that talked about Leonardo da Vinci.
Vinci was another one, yep.
Da Vinci, if you look at his studies, wow. He seems like he got a whole lot of hyper-focuses.
Yep. Robin Williams was another one that was suspect.
Those people all sound like, complete and utter failures, right?
Yeah, they absolutely do.
Never accomplished anything in their life.
And I'll go on a personal level here. I had no sales experience whatsoever when I moved into my sales job. I worked in my sales job for 3 years. I was the top salesman in my company for 3 years by not a small margin. So I was highly successful. I hated the job because it went against everything my ADHD was for, but I was good at it,
How does it feel to be that failure?
Right? I was a total failure, right?
Absolutely.
So, no, where I failed was the impulsive purchases with lots of money coming in.
That was definitely a fucking fail on my part for most of my life, too.
That would be me,
I mean, yeah, I have ADHD and I've amounted to nothing. Currently, I'm sitting here doing a podcast that is, listened to by actual fucking people.
Right.
We have more than one person who listens to my podcast.
Well, and not only that, we're making a partial living on social media. I mean, that sounds
true.
like a giant failure.
And more
right?
importantly for me, we're making a difference in the lives of people that are afflicted by
Very
this.
much so. That is incredibly important.
I was also going to say I have 2 degrees. I have done motivational speaking. I'm an utter failure. I don't know what else you want from me. I'm sorry. I can't do anything.
I have a technical degree. I've been a manager at a steel mill. Not only I was running a blast furnace. I was the guy in charge of running a blast furnace. If you know anything about a blast furnace, it's a volcano that's upside down. Do you think they let just any moron run that?
Sounds so cool.
I know.
You put the
right?
material in on top and you pour molten metal out of the bottom, right? That is what you do. Do you think they let any failure just do that? You have to go through some extensive studies, including EPA studies, to make sure that you can do this.
I don't know, but I'd watch that shit on YouTube.
It was one of the most interesting jobs I've ever had. I hated the company, but I loved the job.
Since everybody else is throwing their credentials on the table, I don't have any degrees, but I do have a diploma in digital media production, which includes graphic design, animation, and things like that. Artistically, I've got songs that have cracked top 40 charts across the globe, and now I'm endeavoring to carry on making the difference that I mentioned previously in the lives of people that feel like they're suffering or that they're marginalized or they don't have representation, they don't have a voice, they don't have an understanding of this disorder. And that to me is almost more important, but that's a personal thing.
I agree. It's critically important to me, and the reason I keep on doing this, I mean, hell, I pushed myself to the point where almost everybody who follows me knows that I was hospitalized recently after a suicide attempt. Thankfully, I didn't go through with it, but I pushed myself to that point trying to help other people. So, that's the thing, is it's so important to help these other people, but we also have to sit back. And thankfully, one of the best things that came out of this was a lot of my friends all sat back and took a break for a little bit and worked on their mental health instead of us hyper focusing on everybody else like we do because we're people pleasers.
So Jamie, what is this myth that people with ADHD are just stupid or lazy and that they will never be able to accomplish anything?
I'm gonna have to say that one is abundantly busted.
Fantastic.